Amar, I think you need to mute everyone.
Hello. Hello.
I'd request everyone to please mute. There's a lot of background sound. Just request everyone to put their mics on mute, please. Amar, can you just identify and mute people who don't have their mics on? Amar and Mitali.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah. And you've gone on mute too? Can you unmute the panel? I think the panelists and the speakers can unmute now. I can't hear anyone now. Can anyone hear me? Asad, can you hear me? Tanuja?
I can.
Yes, we can hear you.
I've gone tone deaf, yes. I thought.
No, you
can hear you. Another 2 minutes. I think we should start. It's 5 p.m. Give it another 2 minutes. Yeah.
Luby, you can start.
Amar's spotlight is on the panelist immediately once I'm done. Yeah?
Yes.
All right. Good evening and welcome to everyone from FLO Mumbai. I am Zubaina Shapurwala, chairperson of the FLO Mumbai chapter. It's truly a pleasure to have you all here. For those of you who are new to FLO, FLO was established in 1983, a division of FICCI. FLO is an all-India organization and we have 18 chapters pan-India, where our newest edition this year is the Jammu and Kashmir chapter. Our members comprise of entrepreneurs, professionals, corporate executives. Basically, women transforming India through trade, industry, and innovation. Our discussion today is about music, art, and culture in India with a stellar panel. Thank you to all our wonderful guests. This conversation is extremely important for us as an industry body, since the health crisis has shown us the important role that culture, music, and art plays in our lives, and that they are the heartbeat of communities in our cities. Today, we will hear about the role of that culture, art, and music has played as a resource for resilience, connection, and recovery. While industries discuss business and revenue, artists speak about hopes, fears, aspirations, and experiences. We will touch upon the multiple ways in which all these spaces, be it theaters, galleries, museums, and music performances, have reinvented during the lockdown in the digital era. Let me not hold you back any longer and hand over to Armin Dordi to do the honors and introduce our guests for the evening today. Armin, you're on mute.
Yes, yeah.
The most important of thanking me needs to be said again.
Yes. Thank you, Lubina. Thank you. And good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to the FLO Mumbai chapter event. It's absolute pleasure to introduce our guest for the evening. It's normally said ladies first, but I'm not going to start with the ladies first because I'm going to start with the men of the evening, that is Asad Lalji. Asad is a senior vice president of SR Group, CEO of Avid Learning. Under his leadership, Avid has distinguished itself with a wide variety of arts and cultural programming and is currently at the foremost of India's cultural hub. In 2006, he was appointed a curator for one of the newly restored Royal Opera House, Mumbai, for which he was successfully designed robust program. Asad, I love Royal Opera House. Asad's career demonstrates his total passion for technology and new media. Thank you, Asad, for giving us Royal Opera House. As a child, I have seen movies through there. Thank you very much. And welcome to the program. Avanti, and our second most influencer that I've heard about her from my 16 years old child. Okay, so Avanti is a Bombay and Boston-based artist and a creator who thrives at the intersection of pop and soul. She's on a mission to create music that challenges societal norms. Avanti has spoken and performed at United Nations and TEDx conferences and at venues and festivals across India, USA, and Southeast Asia. When she's not making music, she encourages young people to build their confidence, take charge of their health, and become active community members. Welcome, Avanti. Looking forward to a great evening with you. Welcome. And Tanuja Gomes. Tanuja, I'm thankful to you for the music in my house. My daughter is a student of Fatados since last 10 years. Wow. Tanuja Gomes is a co-CEO and co-founder of Fatado School of Music. She's a seasonal banking professional and has worked for multinational banks like HSBC, Barclays in India and in Singapore. Tanuja's vision is to impart the best music curriculum in school all across the nation. Her personal goal is to reach out to as many fellow women entrepreneurs and build a thriving community which inspires and supports each other. And she's also recognized as a leader for women entrepreneur by Business World 2021. Super, Tanuja. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
And our moderator, Saloni Doshi. She is an art patron and a collector of a contemporary, tribal, aboriginal art from India and the subcontinent. In 2009, she decided to develop a part of her warehouse space in South Mumbai into artist studios and residencies to give artist communities something that was lacking and much required in the city space. She was a founder, chairperson of Bombay chapter of Young Fiki Ladies organization FLO and is a current chairperson for London School of Economics alumni in Bombay. In 2016, Saloni was also awarded a prestigious Art Think South Asia Fellowship sponsored by Coach, British Council and a Goethe Institute. Saloni has moderated several discussions on the art residencies and art collecting, and is currently writing a book of mapping residences in India. Welcome, Saloni, and looking forward for a great moderating session under you. Let's start. Thank you, Saloni.
Thank you. So welcome all of you, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Armin and Lubaina, for inviting me to have this conversation with all three lovely people in the arts and culture space. I would like to start this, in spite of the introductions, I would like to start this with each one of you talking about your journeys before the pandemic. As you know, all of us and our lives and the industries we work in, which is the art and culture space, has changed. The space has changed drastically, and our lives, our personal lives, along with that space, has changed drastically. So, what was your life before the pandemic, and in terms of your work and your and in terms of your personal journey with your work? We don't have to follow men's first. Okay, we can start with Tanuja.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. Like how Arvind mentioned, essentially, music education, like anyone would think, is a very touch and feel, warm body where there is a teacher. Either you learn in school or you learn in a center. Essentially, our model was that. So on March 2020, we had about 320 employees, which include over 220 teachers. We had 75,000 students across India. So this is like, of course, the obvious cities, but like small, like Shahpur, smaller places, across India. We had 15 centers. So that was the model. And when the lockdown set in, everything was ground zero. So for us, an entire business, which was brick and mortar offline business, schools shut down, and that's how everything came back to zero, and that's when our journeys began. But essentially, we were building a thriving community of music learners across schools and centers.
Asad?
Thank you again, guys, for inviting me and having me part of this wonderful panel. I think before lockdown, we all had a different life, the way we did things differently. Just to put it into context, I am not from the arts and culture background. I haven't studied arts and culture. I used to be a madman in New York until 2010. I moved back to India and Bombay, where I grew up. And I stumbled into the arts and culture. I worked for a company called the SR Group. They recruited me from the US. They brought me here, and I found Avid and Mrs. Ruya, and the rest is history. And Avid, we were we've done a little online stuff, but we were primarily an offline programming platform. And through that, I've had the pleasure of curating the Kalagora, parts of the Kalagora Arts Festival, and other programs that happen in the city, primarily based in the city. The Royal Opera House happened in 2016, not 2006, as was announced earlier. I would have loved that if it had happened. We realized, I was actually sitting at the Royal Opera House when the lockdown happened, doing a meeting of a really exciting program, which I hope will come back, at least in a few years. And we realized that this is going nowhere. And what we did was we just transitioned online for Avid and for the Royal Opera House. But life before, when you talk about the performing arts or any of the arts, it's no debate. Performing to a live audience, going and seeing a live performance, or in the visual arts space that Saloni is in, is different, and it can never take. But we've all made changes in the way we consume the arts, and the arts has this tremendous capacity to heal and make sense of the times we live in, and that's what we have done. And I will come back to more of it. I have a 3-minute cap for each question, so I'm just being, respectful of that. So,
recording in progress.
Saloni.
I can perhaps continue until somebody comes back.
Yeah. Shami?
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Avanti, can you see me?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Can you see me and hear me?
No, we
No.
can hear you. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you're back.
Now we
You're back.
can.
Yes,
Now
yes.
we can.
Wonderful.
We can see also.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Avanti, continue.
Of course. Firstly, again, thank you for having me here. Prior to the pandemic, I was finishing up college. I was doing a dual degree at Harvard and the Berklee College of Music. I was studying psychology and global health at Harvard and voice and music business at Berklee. And, in between both of those spaces have been my whole life. But in addition, I was a performing artist, independent artist in the musical spaces and other spaces. I was constantly on a bus, on a plane, performing in New York, Boston. I'd fly back to India to perform at festivals like NH7, several venues here, and we actually had a tour planned in the UK, parts of the US, and India, and then of course, COVID hit and had to come back immediately. Finished up my last semester of college online. Graduated online, which wasn't really graduating in some sense, and had to really shift the way in which we work. And for a lot of my fellow independent artists, particularly in the musical space, it's been very difficult during this time because live performance income was their primary source of income. So people have had to pivot and find other avenues, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout this time. But one of my also, and I'm sure Asad and Tanuja, of course, and all of you can relate to this. I also used to do a lot of theater. We had a bunch of theater shows lined up at Prithvi and other places, and it's sad when those gems are not able to be brought back, because unlike music and some other art forms which you can still continue in some capacity digitally, things like theater and others are really hard to do that and have that experience. So it's definitely been interesting, but as a young person, I also see a lot of opportunity in that, and I'm happy to touch upon that later on. Saloni, you're on mute.
Saloni, we can't hear you. Yeah.
So thank you for that. And, my next question would be that would you see the future of your own, the industries that you are in, which is overall the culture space? In case of Tanuja and Avanti, it's more music. Actually, so is it for you, Asad. But, you are pan-India. And what is it that you feel is the future of, the industry for the space that you are in? Do you think it's changed? Do you think being in the pandemic and this whole digital era has changed the whole industry and the way we consume it as an audience? Okay, we can start from Asad there.
Asad, you're mute.
Sorry. Thank you. As there's a cheesy adage that says music is the soundtrack of life, right? And I thought this was a music-oriented panel, so I put my music hat on. But, for the arts and culture as a whole, we all have to believe that life is going to go on as usual. We have to believe that it's going to be a brighter future. As you rightly said, consumption patterns have changed. See, Zoom wasn't invented for this lockdown. Collaboration wasn't invented for this lockdown. Platforms like Book My Show and Insider existed. It's just been optimized because people have been consuming it. So I just think the future is just going to be a hybrid. People aren't walking away from this online avatar that we are all involved in and deeply entrenched in and taking the benefit of in this time when nothing else is available. But people are going to go back, I feel, to what the real thing is. For you, because this is a performance art kind of panel, nothing can replace sitting in, for a musician and for Avanti, especially sitting and hearing your audience applaud or boo or the gasp, and you look into the eyes of your accompaniment, whether it's a tablat, you're a guitarist or whatever. And I joked is for the audience to actually sit and have the performer spit on you, or actually, you see them live. There's nothing that's going to substitute that. So it will be back. It'll be back in due course when things are right. if I had a date, I'll be making a lot of money. With that date, I can, share with people. But it has to come back because, artists need, and people also need this human interaction. We're not robots. At the end of it, if Zoom, but the whole online digital thing is not going anywhere. It's just going to be the way we consume, the way we expect things is also going to change. And this has done some good and also some bad. So we'll come to that later, but
I'd like to add one thing. I mean, Asad, is that when I said is the way we consume is we never did Zoom calls. I mean, today every grandmother has Zoom on her phone. It's as good as WhatsApp, now. I mean, you even Zoom call your own doctor, so let alone culture, but the thing is, I feel like we've also expanded geographically in terms of audiences. I personally feel running a residency, which has been shut for the last 2 years and which we ran for 12 years before that, I feel like we've become a grant making organization now, but the thing is we've got more applications than people would send in, 150 more applications than even what we got last year and in the last 12 years. So I feel like the awareness of people, of your own organization beyond Bombay and beyond national borders is something I witness. This audience aggregation, the term audience aggregation, I actually witnessed it in the pandemic, because an NCPA or the Royal Opera House or anything can only take Bombay-based audiences and also audiences, of a specific socioeconomic background who can afford the ticket, as well as audiences, like I said, Bombay-based and obviously who have access to it, Whereas if you were to supplement this or complement the live shows, like you said, they will exist and the thrill of them is something else, and I completely agree. But if you complement them with this online platform as well, I think, you're expanding so I think what the pandemic has taught us is that we can attract a lot more digital audiences nationally and, and break geographical barriers and hence internationally. If I'm right, and if that's been the experience for the others as well, in time to go forward. So I'd like to hear from you guys as well, Tanuja and Avanti.
So yeah, I think, you and Asad have beautifully captured what is the sense. For us, we've added a new vertical. Consumer behaviors have changed, and they have changed for a long term. So it's a habit that is not just for a month or 2 months. It's now, this is the 15th month, 16th month we have been in lockdown. Convenience will set in. Collaborations will set in. So I personally think earlier, like a lot of this extracurricular activities which were learned and a parent would have had to take a child in different places, you will opt for convenient options of access, where tier 2, tier 3 people could have never probably aspired to go learn and, make that happen today. That will, you will see the online enabling that. And collaboration today, Avanti, all of us today, look how we have collaborated, how we've come together. I think collaboration will further prosper. So essentially think, and it's here, the whole, what Asad mentioned, what you mentioned, hybrid is here to stay, convenience is here to stay. Essentially that's my take.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, echoing both of your points, I think a few things. One is art and culture is really what has saved our lives during this pandemic. In the midst of everything else, people were turning to their favorite music, literature, books, art, TV shows. And it's interesting because some of the older generations and the younger generations' consumption habits have now kind of the gap is being narrowed because of this, online space. And even when we move into hybrid, a lot of younger folks, right? If you take Gen Z, which ends in my birth year, 1997. So teenagers and kind of young adults today, they were already used to consuming things in shorter forms, right? You have 15-second videos, you have 60-second, you have vertical, horizontal, all of these things. And because now that is accessible to folks across, right? What y'all are saying about it being accessible, not just to a certain class, but the internet is also a it's a leveler, right? And it allows for folks to create in different ways and build in different ways. I myself have seen personally my audiences grow in a very large way because we've been able to access and tap beyond just the verticals of the proximal spaces we were in, right? We're no longer just stuck to the cities. We're no longer just stuck to places. And everybody is consuming in this way. I don't think that it's going to go away. If anything, it's going to be more developed and refined further. I think we're going to see more and more, for example, innovations in spaces like AR and VR. We're going to see a lot more live streaming happen with higher quality so that there's more access across the globe, to different experiences and spaces. And I think this is here to stay. If anything, this has accelerated what was already bound to happen. That being said, of course, you can't take away from the live in-person experience of a lot of art forms, but I think we all are going to be continuously moving with these times and figure out what that middle ground is.
We used to have live streaming. I remember of plays, right, Asad, at NCPA, plays and the Swan Lake, and I remember seeing a couple of them, even ballets. But you're right. I mean, I feel like, do you feel India is ready to do this? Like, say, Asad was having an event, or, you were having an event. Do you think India is ready to live stream this across other cities in India, let alone, taking it abroad? But, to do that, do you think we're already thinking in those lines? Do you think we're ready for this digital age? I mean, I know that we are right now, because it is by force. It is not by, choice. Of course, if everything opened up, everyone will be out on the road. But do you think India is ready for this, is ready for this digital era going forward? Do you think people are liking this, sitting at home and enjoying something that's going on in Chennai from the comforts of their sofa or bed?
Is that an open question to everyone?
Yeah, it's an open question, and in terms of audiences as well as in terms of audience participation. You know what I mean? Earlier we would, like, if say Brian Adams was performing when I was a kid, I flew down from Delhi to Bombay to watch him. If it was being live streamed in Delhi, I would have just gone, to whichever hotel or restaurant or wherever it was being live. So what do you think, the future, where do you think the future lies now for us with what's happening?
I can speak for myself. I mean,
Right.
I do think, again, coming back to my last point, digital is not new. This existed. See, people's consumption of arts and culture has changed. They've been used to it now. So it's already in their system. So sure, they're going to accept it. And, it's giving, as you likely said, it's giving you access. It's also more affordable. It's giving you reach. So why wouldn't they? And also, as Avanti said, internet is an equalizer. So people are more aware of what is happening. So I think people are. I mean, it's a given. It's it's not a question debate. Is what kind of programs are people going to be wanting to consume, which is the next thing, because you have everything in the world on your fingertips, most of all for free. And I know we're going to go to the monetizing question because we are talking to FLO. But so that is the problem, because everything in the world is at your fingertips. I mean, as the Netflix CEO says, my only competition is sleep. And you just think of it from that perspective, everything's out there. So how do you choose? But it's also tricky for us as producers of art, is how do you get that audience and how do you retain them? Because people are flipped. See, if you go to an NCP or you come to a Royal Opera House, you spend half an hour getting there, you're not going to bounce in 5 minutes if you don't like what you see. But if you're online and you don't get my attention for the first 2 minutes, they're out of the door. So, which is a very important part of digital. It's not that easy. We've been very fortunate. We did 240 programs last year in lockdown, and we continue to do, but we have to monitor numbers and actually figure out ways of engaging them. And people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter because they have so many options, and I don't blame them. So that's my speech.
Yeah.
My take and my input is, like what Asad mentioned, I think what will really be important is the type of content. See, for example, Saloni, when Swiggy and Zomato came, if you look at it, today we are used to it, but just think of it an idea then. Someone would think, for me, the experience going to a restaurant matters. It doesn't matter whether the food comes home. That itself is an experience. India was at a point where going out to a restaurant was like a family event.
Yeah.
And imagine if someone says, I'm going to get that food home. People
Yeah.
first thing would have said, no, that's not really going to work. Why will I pay the same price?
Yeah.
But it worked. Even before COVID, it worked, right? Because convenience. I mean, I keep coming to that point. So, and the kind of performance, the kind of content will have. I mean, Avanti is an artist, how she has beautifully transformed the kind of people who follow her on Insta, the kind of audience. I'm sure she also understands what kind of content she's curating and which has a great engagement, which does not have. There is a lot of science behind that, I'm sure. It would be great to hear your thoughts, Avanti.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
content so far. Content king so far.
Yes, absolutely.
Totally. And it is, I think, thank you for those kind words. I think, so one thing that I am going to venture a guess most of the people watching this have not heard of, or if you have, you may not personally use it. There's an application called Discord. Any of the panelists does this name ring a bell to any of you? Okay.
No.
So Discord is just one example, but there are several examples of similar types of applications or community building tools. Discord, the interface is like Slack, which some of y'all may have used in the corporate world. Essentially, you can have several text-based channels, voice-based channels, and customize it to your own little world. So Discord used to be really popular among the gaming community, which existed as a primarily online space prior to the pandemic, right? Because gamers and live streamers were in that space. And essentially it was a way for people who cared about that specific game to have conversations with one another about specific things, or, engage with the person who was doing that. Now, during the pandemic, Discord has actually become a really interesting tool. So there's a lot of school children who are on it. There's a lot of college children who are on it. And many of them are using it as sub-communities. And for me as an artist, we have, my name is Avanti, and our Discord server is called the Avant Tribe. And essentially it's a space where people come not only to have direct access to me and engage with me in a way that other platforms don't allow. Other platforms, it's producer, creator to audience. There's very little interaction unless it's one-on-one. Whereas here you feel like you have direct access. But beyond that, it's been a really great data aggregator for me to understand what do the people who, may have come together because of me or because of my content or music, what do they care about? They care about education. They care about life advice. They care about technology, food, sports, all of these things. And we can give them a space to discuss all of that, to hold space for those conversations. One of my missions is to, help provide resources and access to young folks. So we do a lot of mental health sessions. We bring in a lot of trained professionals. We do a lot of career sessions with younger folks, in their 20s and 30s who are just in that space. You can ask those direct questions. And the thing that really blows my mind is we host events every single week, and they're in a range of arts, right? So sometimes we'll have like a art exhibition event where people will send in their digital art and talk about it. Most often we have a talent show, and there are people from such different parts of the country, such different parts of the world. Yesterday, somebody joined in to a talent show / masterclass we were doing from Malta. And she just, joined in and saw that it was happening, wanted to be a part of it. And so to me, that's really cool, because what I've noticed among younger generations is that content, if you will, the performing arts, all of these, it's becoming more peer-to-peer. And it's breaking the shackles of institution and infrastructure in a way where you had to know somebody at the NCPA to put up a show and do whatever and something of that nature. But today you can organize a show anywhere. You can do anything, right? And there's both good and bad to that. But I think that it really provides opportunity. We've discovered so many talents from across the world and across India, and they've discovered one another. So, my point is just more of these are going to crop up where it's community oriented and where it's more niche based, verticalized across the spaces, where the country, location, city no longer matters, but more just the mindset and the values of a collective matters.
And you save flight tickets and hotel fares.
Fair. I mean, I still maintain that there's nothing that's going to replace the live experience. I also know for a fact that many of these folks will 100% buy a ticket and show up to my live show if I'm in their city, right? And it can be in Shimla or wherever, but they also want to meet one another. I think it's going to facilitate both online and offline, but it allows you to broaden your horizons in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise if you were in just your bubble.
So your next live show has to be in Bombay at the Royal Opera House. But you're right. It does democratize the arts, and it's a leveler. Everyone has access to the same thing. I totally agree with you. It really gives you access.
I have to say, I mean, while it's also a leveler, I also have to say that there are things you have to pay for. There are things you can't even dream of doing, like all of us have someone we want to meet or see. I mean, even if you have the money, you just can't land up in their homes, right? So I feel like last year we organized this webinar series where we had 4 of Asia's top artists who had recently concluded their retrospective shows and top curators. Most of them were based in the US, and we opened that out to audiences everywhere. And the kind of people we got. I mean, like I had so many people saying, Saloni, I can't even imagine I could hear Shazia Sikandar. I've never even seen her. You know what I mean? They've only Googled her, seen some pictures. So, or go through a show live in a museum. So they were walking us through their shows, through slide presentations, or some of them actually walk them through the physical space. So I can go to Philadelphia, but I may not have the money. Some people may have the money, but don't have the health, or the time. So the thing is, or they just won't get a walkthrough of a show, which is a retrospective show through the eyes of the artists and in the voice of the artists, which for them is a bigger dream than anything else. So I just feel like these kind of barriers and breaking them is, at least they got to do it. You know what I mean? At least they got to see it. I just feel it was a big thrill for me personally, even though I visit all these places every year. But to just have it online, and then also the fact that you can revisit it. If you missed out something, you can go back.
But we're only looking at it from one side, right? We're looking at it from our side as a consumer, but look at it from the artist side.
That's about monetization.
No, one side. But, from the artist side, if you really think of it, is, somebody told me this phrase. It says the fear of becoming invisible. So what is happening is artists and across the genre who normally would not do this are now adapting, embracing these alternate forms of connecting with their audience. So the Shazia would be wonderful sitting there in her museum space waiting for people to come and meet her. So it's a two process. It's not just a one-way street. They are there because we're there, and we're there because they are there. I don't know which side I am.
Very shy. She's not the kind of person who would say yes to something like this so easily. She was the last one in the roster, but she did it. She did it, and she was so happy, and she was so happy about the audiences and the feedback and everything. So like you said, I mean, it did open new audiences, but it's also people who are so shy, and shy because not because they don't get opportunities. Some are shy because they're just shy and they don't like to meet people, visibly. They like these audiences where they're speaking and they can't see anyone in front of them. So even if they're speaking to a large group of people. So yeah. Anyway, okay, so speaking about that, I mean, let's talk about monetizing. Of course, I got a lot of calls after this webinar series, which is going to be concluded this year as well. But I got a lot of calls that you should have monetized this. I mean, this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was like, are you crazy? It's on the YouTube channel of Space 118, and everyone's going to see it throughout the year whenever they want to, and no one's going to pay for it. Because like Asad said, we're so used to everything being free. And Avanti, I want you to talk about it a little more later after we finish this monetizing of, the content that you think is king and how you monetize it and whether it can be monetized, which is, and do you think, I mean, I think people in India are very used to getting things free of cost. Asad, you and me both only do things free of cost. We can't charge. We can't even think of charging. But I mean, Royal Opera House charges a fee, but for Avid, everything is free. And I've come for many of the talks. And you also do tie-ups with other, places in India. Of course, Fatado cannot do this. It's a commercial school and you're teaching. Otherwise, you'll be bankrupt. You wouldn't be able to do it. And, of course, artists need to be paid. But I just feel that, is this possible? Which is why I said, even if you do develop great content, are the audiences ready to pay for this content? And we can start from Avanti.
Happy to. So, I think I'm going to touch a little bit actually upon partially the negative side first, and then go into monetization. All of the beauty of being able to have the two-way street between the audience and consumer is amazing, but it also forces certain kinds of artists who are just not comfortable having to really focus on numbers on social media in a way that they've never had to before, right? And that becomes the legitimacy tool. Besides the legitimacy tool, it also becomes a monetization tool, because somebody with a larger number-based audience is going to command more money today, because that is really the primary metric, right? And so let's say in the music space, I personally, for example, am very comfortable doing multiple types of content. I enjoy it. It really serves my personality and my mission. But I have several peers in the music industry who are not comfortable, for whom writing a song every single day is more useful, unique to them, for whom it feels alien and it feels like a chore, and they feel like they constantly have to put themselves out there in a way that feels inauthentic to them because everybody else is, right? There's a kid who may have never been in the industry, may not even have that great a voice, but looks great, attractive, and has some people fanboying over them, who suddenly their numbers go crazy because one piece of content goes viral, and all of that. And there are the perils of virality, right? Because for some people, one piece of content goes viral and then that's it, but that doesn't create a career. A career is built by constantly having, whether it's content or whatever, but building on things and having that longevity and having that forward-thinking vision, which today's content world has made it very myopic for a lot of folks, So I just wanted to touch upon that and be clear that it's not all roses and sunshine. Now, in terms of the monetization, as a musician or a performing artist, your primary income came from live income. And that obviously has significantly reduced during this time. There are still virtual shows happening, but we're paid much less, and it's just not the same experience because I'm still singing to a piece of metal and plastic. There are other avenues. You can basically, for example, whether if you are a composer or a writer, you have the ability to get certain royalties on that. But sad to say, a lot of the infrastructure for that is not as robust in India as it is elsewhere in the world. So, the payout you get is much, much, much further down the line. In many other parts of the world, you do get, for example, if your songs are placed on a TV show or a film or some other kind of piece or played in a coffee shop, you get royalties from there. And that's, called sync licensing. I'm happy to go into detail if anyone's curious, but all of these multiple avenues and streams of income that musicians should have usually don't exist in India as much because we just don't have the proper infrastructure set up to them. And many of them, are taken away because we compose music for film. And that's a whole other industry within itself. And despite that, playback singers don't get paid their due, and that's a whole other thing. But besides going down that, you have your music gets, you perform somewhere, you get money, your music gets played somewhere, you get money, and it gets streamed, whether it's played on Spotify or Apple or Savan or any of your spaces, you make money from there. But that money, unfortunately, is pittance. And all of these streams are based on multiple factors, such as how long is somebody listening to the song and the geography in which they're based. So somebody with, say, a few 100,000 streams in India is making very little money, whereas somebody with a few 100,000 streams in the US is making much more money than they are, because just globally our people in advertising value an American customer more than they value an Indian customer. And it makes sense, right? Because that's why it's actually cheaper to run an ad in India. And I'm sure Asad can, touch upon the logistics of that. But so that's just the musical space. As a creator, or if you're in the content space, there's 2 or 3 primary ways you monetize today. One is your videos themselves, the content themselves, depending on the platform, can make money off of people watching it. So the person watching it may not pay to watch it, but a brand pays to run an ad on your content. So you make money kind of on the back end, and that usually happens on a platform like YouTube or Facebook. Instagram still hasn't figured that out yet, but they will be rolling it out. The second is brand placements or brand integrations. So, brands will reach out to you. They're paying for the audience you've created, and they want their products to be shared. So sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not so subtle. And I'm sure you've seen this happening in multiple different ways. And then if your content is placed in certain spaces, or if it's curated specifically in the form of, say, a masterclass or a series and things like that, that is directly monetized from your audience, or you can have memberships and things of that nature. that was a very, long answer, but I hope that kind of covered the general spaces. For me personally, if anyone's curious, my monetization as a creator in these 3 realms I just mentioned is what's helping fuel my music, because also creating music and creating art is expensive. And anyone who's in this space knows that it takes a lot of time, resources, energy to create that. So it's that, for me, it's that ecosystem, but it's hard to sustain sometimes. Sorry, very long answer. Go ahead, Asad.
Tanuja should go first. She's the one who's cracked the code.
Oh, well, yeah. So I think I will answer this question as an entrepreneur, not in the artist space, but as an entrepreneur. And so when COVID hit us, when I mentioned that, we were a completely offline company. And from there on, we quickly had to change the whole DNA, understand what skill sets we need to build, and how then we should move from, existing to surviving to thriving. And we literally made a plan. At one point, we had to take some extreme steps. How do we cut costs? Because revenues were zero, like we mentioned. At the same time, the other point, how do we scale and how do we put up the whole online piece? Personally, I'm extremely passionate about tech, and I feel that tech as an enabler in any business has huge prospects. So in fact, on 19th of March last year, me and my co-founder, we sat down and I was so excited. I said, we are going to be able to test our consumers, practice this, move online. And I think that excitement, while at the same time, we were very grounded. We were not up in the air. We were very grounded. We have to do what is right. So, because it's an organization we are running, we have to ensure the future of our team members and the large team members. How do we protect? And I'm very happy to share that from some steps taken to now we've retracted. We had very aggressive salary cuts. So now we've reinstated that and how we've protected the team. At the same time, we've reached out to the community. We've taught over 25,000 students in the last 15 months. 6,500 students, just B2C coming to us. So I think that really, it's like starting a new business. So for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, you have had to start a new business all over again. Think practical. In that sense, you think pessimistically, and then you're thinking very optimistically because you have to build that. And just one last point I want to touch upon is this whole digital marketing. That whole point for me was a journey because it's not easy. Like, for you, Avanti, it comes naturally. For me, frankly, going on Facebook is like, oh my God, I don't go on Facebook and my team will say, please go like something. It just doesn't come naturally, definitely for me, to go and engage. But I think as a business person, you have to realize that sometimes this is not what you may enjoy, but you have to do what you have to do. And I have to admit that, these kind of engaging sessions I enjoy because posting so many people reach out and how you can make a difference. So that's very satisfying. But essentially, picking up new skill sets is important. Being practical is very important. And I think as an entrepreneur, monetization is survival, right? It's not about good to do, it's survival. So you have to do what is right. So that's how I have approached the whole monetization as an entrepreneur.
I'll just like to ask one more thing. Tanuja, do you think you've been able to monetize through social media?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have never in all these years, 10 years, it's 9 years and 1 year. I think whatever we would, we've never, I don't think I really looked at it because we reached to an audience, we reached to educators. Educators wanted music education. We grew the business. That vis-a-vis the whole, today, the entire engagement is only on social media. So I feel that there is a huge plus. One has to understand how to navigate that world. It is not as simple. It is not as how people will say, it's not a directly proportional relationship. You spend money on Facebook, you do all this and you will get your business. So it doesn't work. We've learned that. We continue to learn that. It's one of the hardest,
most simplest thing, so it's something you can't not be into, but something one has to navigate.
Asad?
So from the monetization perspective, first I have to tell you, my daughter is one of those 25,000 people. She's educated, and hats off to them for this amazing program. I was telling her earlier, I mean, it is just such a thought through at so many touch points. And I think even Armin's kid is also part of her student base. But, you know, I can I just finish with the Furtado story, because I'm a big fan club. You know, Anthony and Joseph are the most collaborative people I have met in the music industry. They say yes to everything, to collaborate, to support. They'll send you a piano, they'll send you a guitar, even in this project. So I think you have that equity, which is kind of translated to what you're doing as part of your success story. And a second part I'm saying is, you know, people spend on children and children's education more easily than they open their purse strings for themselves. That said, my model is different from an Avid and from an opera house. Avid is a corporate funded cultural philanthropy thing. So if I start charging, I used to charge only for my workshops at SR House or the Opera House, where I used to feed you 3 meals, and I used to charge so I can pay the faculty and cover my meal costs. That's it. But in the online space, if I had to charge, I don't know if people would come. I mean, I just did a workshop for children in illustration, and the response was, I mean, we had wait lists. But I don't know if I put a price tag to that, would that come? And from an opera house perspective, if I had to charge, see, I'm not doing live performances online for opera house, because opera house is a performing arts venue, a venue for hire. I only make money, or we only survive if your bum is in that seat. So for me to do an Insta live of a performance doesn't work. So I'm doing pre-recorded, very interesting programs, and it's done extremely well. Furtado's is our partner on a regular basis. We're doing film festivals. We did a music film a festival about music documentaries. We just finished yesterday, which was just fantastic. But there I can't charge for these sort of programs because it doesn't make sense to my core. So depending on what your offering is, it changes. And it is, as you all mentioned, you know, social media, the whole digitization, it's a learning process. If anyone tells you they figured it out, it's wrong, because we all optimize. We boost an ad and we'll see every 5 minutes what is happening and change it. So if we had the answer, we'd have done it correctly from the first time. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but I hope that we can. And, you know, at the end of it, it's the artists, you know, see, us as platforms and us sitting on the Zoom call are the privileged few who can, you know, have not gone hungry, or not been, our lives have not been that drastically affected. But, you know, I've heard stories and I've interacted with people like the Tabalchi of a group. They don't have money to pay for their food. For them, what are they going to do? And, you know, then we do events to kind of raise money for them. But so it's a very tricky situation, and it's a situation that I hope resolves itself from a monetization perspective, because a lot of the artists, I mean, not the ones we know of, but are actually leaving their craft and moving to doing they're becoming day laborers, for lack of better words, to just put food on their table, which is a very sad situation that we are not, it's not in our face, but, you know, if you're part of some groups, you actually learn about that. So that's my spiel of money.
I'm just adding one part, you know, I know that Saloni will have some follow-on question, but you're right. I think it's, Asad, the whole, how do we protect these communities? To be an artist is not easy. To go out there and pursue something what you love, not being sure whether you can monetize, it's not easy. And I think as an ecosystem, it's our responsibility to help that and manage that. You know, I mean, when we went through this whole transition, some of our teachers had to quit because this whole online last year in March, April was not even there. So some teachers were really looking at pursuing other careers. And now I feel what have worked is technology for us. And now they're thriving. You know, they're doing double of what they were doing in before COVID. So, but yes, we have to find answers for all of these people, how we can make it work.
I agree. I mean, I do feel strongly about the fact that the artist community needs to be protected, which is why when we shut our residency for 2 years, we transitioned into a grant-making organization. For 2 years, I've been doing fundraiser shows with art, which I curate, and fortunately selling them so that we can raise funds to give, you know, full financial grants to young artists who, like you said, take the risk of becoming artists and not knowing where they're going to go, you know, whether they can, rightly you said, monetize it or not. And most of them can't. I mean, we have about 25 to 30,000 students who get out of art schools. Probably 1 to 5 get through a gallery a year in India. So what happens to the rest? And which is why this grant is for, younger artists under 40 who have gone to art schools. It was very difficult decision, because someone, a lot of people say you can also be a self-made, self-taught artist. But I said, but they also made an effort to go to art school. So what happens to them who've already spent 3 years of their life going to art school, another 2 more years doing their masters? What about after spending 5 years and you can't get a grant because someone else decided to sit at home and paint and, get it? I just feel that, when it is difficult, it's a very difficult industry to be in, and it's a very difficult industry to make money out of. And it's a very passion driven industry. So you have to be passionate about what you do. Money follows later. And Avanti, with that, I would like to start with you on asking the next thing about what does it feel to be an influencer? And since today there are so many, I know many in fashion. I follow a lot in fitness. Now that's my new passion. And I don't think we have many in the arts. There are many people who make fun of people in the arts. And but I mean, just as an influencer, how did you get into this? Or did you just become by default, or what was your journey like, and how do you think it makes a difference?
Well, it's so funny because that term
being a blue tick.
Sorry, could you repeat that again, please?
Also, how does it make a difference being a blue tick on Instagram?
Okay, so one thing I will say for anybody, I know a lot of the folks watching this might be older, but you might have kids who are interested in the arts in some way. If anybody is going into this, it's really important as somebody who wants to be a content creator, artist, whatever you want to call it, to be a little bit platform agnostic. And I say this because platforms are changing daily, right? Just the way in which our industries change daily. So it's important that folks are equipped with the skills to do that across the board. This idea of influencing, right, is that term freaks me out a little bit, because it does come with a lot of responsibility. And I've seen that particularly over this last year. I think the way it started for me, to answer your question, was I was an artist and musician and performer for many years, and at the time I saw social media as an obligation where everybody, who is in my space had to share something to social media. So my social media was very much, hey, I'm performing here, come buy tickets. Hey, this is me at a show, and essentially just a portfolio of sharing my journey. Whereas for the last year, it's changed slightly, and that's twofold. One is I always was under the misconception that I had to be more established as a musician for my voice to matter. I'm somebody who's always cared about a lot of different things, and I thought that my people wouldn't care as much. But what I realized is younger generations, they really, really want to understand who you are holistically. So they care about everything from what you eat to who you're dating, to also what you think about social and political issues, and how you engage with them, right? And so I started doing, in addition to the musical content, a lot of things in the education space, in more of, I guess one would call it lifestyle, but also having these conversations. And I see somebody's question around me vlogging with my grandparents in the comment box. Yes, I have. And part of that was because I realized that there was a lack of intergenerational conversation around things that we typically consider taboo, whether those are things like mental health or sexual health or, gender discrimination and biases. And having just me talking might feel relatable or aspirational, but having my 89-year-old dadi who wears traditional Maharashtrian sari engaging with me on that conversation is something that is more shareable and consumable. And I found that worked in some capacity. At this stage, this idea of influencer, what scares me about that is people put a lot of trust and reverence in somebody that they look up to, or to whom they consider an influencer. And for me, that feels like a huge sense of responsibility. I'm very grateful for it, but I think that people need to be more responsible about it. My vibe, if you will, is very much of that being their internet older sister, who sings, talks, and converses about things that we generally care about in this world. I am an older sister in real life, and so instead of just my brother, I now have hundreds of thousands of younger siblings who call me Didi, Akka, and whatever you want to name it on the internet. And I see that. I see it in the way that they engage with me, in the way that they talk about things. I also see some people really misusing that power. as they say, with great power comes great responsibility, because a lot of people think, oh, it's just about you building an audience and then you selling them products that you wear or eat, but it's really about you have the power to change a mindset. So I think that anybody in that space, or if anybody's interested in it, or if your kids are following people who are in that space, just know that those people actually play a huge role in their lives, because they really look up to them and they really follow them. So understanding what that space is like, I think, is important, rather than being like, oh no, you're just on your phone, because those are the people they're listening to. They're not necessarily listening to the politicians or the folks on TV. They are listening to these people.
Saloni, you're on mute. Saloni.
Yeah, I said, Tanuja, you have a question. Thank you, Avanti, for that. You're very right. Tanuja, you have a question. You have introduced the FSM Buddy platform during the COVID-19 pandemic. Do tell us a little more about this.
Thank you. Yeah, so essentially, it's an online platform where we started focusing and getting into the whole right brain activities related. So we already, in that sense, have a very strong understanding of music. We did foray into other cultural arts options, so whether it is art, drawing, painting, whether it is dance, some languages. So the whole idea is that the whole right brain development is an extremely important pursuit for a student, for a child, and we have understanding of the ecosystem. We created a tech platform and got the best educators, built the journey for our educators with training, supporting them in various ways, and now enabling it by offering to everybody to teach online.
Okay, great. And if anyone else has questions, please do put them in. I think there's one for Asad, that you've been a driving force of Mumbai's cultural scene and a vital voice in the mindset change of how to treat art and culture as a sustainable segment. You also enable your spaces for social advocacy. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. The way I treat arts and culture, normally I really treat it like, because I'm an advertising guy. I mean, at the end of it, it's a product or a service you're selling. You have a target, you have a segment, you segment your audience, and you give them what they want. If you put it in the marketing segment, but there's also heart, right? I just feel that you have a voice, you have a platform. For me, it was either Avid or a stage at the Opera House that you can use to convey a message that you want to share. And there is a lot of wonderful programs and content. There are lots of wonderful issues that you can, from empowerment to women's empowerment to, looking at the visually impaired. I mean, we had this performance of Malcolm, which was performed by visually impaired students. And we brought all the kids in from the various schools, the visually impaired schools in Bombay. And what a message, for them is, you can do anything you want. And what I did was I sent all my lovely, well-heeled audiences upstairs, walking up steps to the Opera House, and I placed the students down. So you can create these inspirational kind of platforms for people that, the sky is the limit. I mean, right now we should defy what, limitations that are set to you. And we've done so many programs in that. But the idea is you have to create, and just to answer Avantika's earlier thing, we've gone from a broadcasting, way of targeting people or your message to a narrow casting. Now you know who you're talking to, and you have to talk to them differently. In the yesteryears, Bollywood was your influencer, and Raj Kapoor or Shami Kapoor, even before my time, you used to see them probably twice in your life, where they, you'd see them at an airport or you see them at a 5-star hotel. Otherwise, you never see them. Now they're selling you cement, toothpaste, Swachh Bharat, wear a mask, and they're popping up in one of your screens every day about 6 times. So you have to be very careful, and that whole responsibility from Avanti is just spot on. So that's just my closing comment on that.
I seem to have lost Saloni from Spotlight. Amar, where is Saloni? We can't see her on the Spotlight.
She's upstairs. I mean, I can see her.
Yeah.
This is like the Opera House.
Can you spotlight?
She's in the third balcony.
On the balcony. Amar, can you
There
spot?
she's now
Thank you.
back.
Thank heavens you're back.
Okay, so I thank you, Asad, for that. That was very useful. I think all of you have been very useful, and I'm sure the audience have learned something from this. Lubaina, do you want to take over from here?
Yes,
Do you have
please.
any other
But
questions?
I have one question actually, but because when I listen to Avanti, I listen to Asad, the social bit is very high on both your conversations. I mean, you are on a mission to create music that challenges societal norms, and your aim is to reclaim the way young girls see themselves globally. And Asad is talking about social advocacy. Tanuja is reaching out to so many people, and kind of through her music also helping the society, do so much more. So I just see such a wonderful synergy of the conversation. So I just want to know from Avanti that is it the dual degree that kind of got you into talking about how you can touch upon social issues through your music? Was that the reason?
No, it wasn't. This is something that I've cared about for a very long time because I've been a singer for many, many years. I've trained in Indian classical, I've done choir, all of these things. And I always saw music as, as I said earlier, as a healing tool. It was that for me personally. I've had a lot of health issues in my life. If I'm going into this personally, and music was the healer for me, and it's the thing that got me through. And I recognized that I was really fortunate to have access to healthcare, to have access to education that elevated my mindset, elevated all of these spaces, which many folks don't. And so I think from a very young age, as a teenager, I always saw music as this vehicle beyond just a medium. And I didn't think it was possible until I started becoming a performer myself. And, truly because of this global digital world where we have the ability to turn that platform into something that has a voice beyond just your singing or your speaking voice. So that's the reason. So I've always been, I think the dual degree helped me pursue those in different ways. It had to be very
kind of structured it.
It's structured, but it's very self-driven because it's not like the schools were like, oh, that's amazing. It's very much, I took classes at both that I knew that if I was ever lucky enough to have the literal platform, numbers wise or whatever it might be, I wanted to be a voice of substance and not just a face who, as Asad mentioned, sells cement. There's nothing wrong with that, but
absolutely, so sell socks for that matter.
No, I think, but even if you do, it's important to understand the industry. It's important to have the educational or at least the commitment to understanding what you're talking about and what you stand for. So.
Absolutely. I've heard Asad say, art city is a smart city, and a city without art is soulless. So I'm actually quoting Asad on that. But I want to end by expressing a tremendous amount of gratitude to have you all here. Tanuja for talking to me since the last 4 months of getting all of us here. And thank you for your time and this fantastic conversation. Saloni, thank you for accepting the offer to moderate. And it's lovely that they're all friends. And before I close, I want to hand over to my senior vice chair, Temina Khandwala, for the closing remarks and the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Lubaina. Thank you, Lubaina. Saloni, the spotlight is on you now. So we are curious to know, Space 118 is your baby almost, and you're continuing to support visual artists and art making. This is a form of mentoring, and you've launched Virtual Open Studio Day and have launched a grant for those struggling to be a part of the art world. Could you talk to the audience a little more about the space as well as the Virtual Open Studio Day?
So thank you for asking that question.
You're welcome.
Actually having run a physical residency space for so many years, the few things I realized which this pandemic brought about is that why limit to people who have the means to get here? Of course, we had to do with shutting down the residency, but at the same time, I decided to become a grant making organization, raise funds for these grants, and do everything virtually. Because I personally feel
being virtual has helped me a lot. I mean, in terms of these webinar series that I started with senior artists and curators, the grant will be given. It's a financial grant purely. So, but the jury is so strong. They get a mentorship visits, as in they get Zoom calls with their mentors that the jury decides for them. So if you have a dream mentor, you can mention it, but the jury will anyways give you a mentor that normally can change your entire life. So I think my grant is not so much about just the finance that comes with it, but it's also about getting this mentor, which many artists are really thirsty for. I think, having a good mentor can change your life. So that's number two. And thirdly, when they finish making what they do, not only will they present to the jury, but we will have a session like this where they will present or on Instagram Live. So we've called it the webinar or Insta Live, either ways, whichever artist prefers, whichever medium, where they take us through what they made through this grant that they got. So I feel like that way, I mean, I used to do open studio days, which were then visited from anything between 75 to 100, 150, 200 people. But in Bombay, again, I don't want to restrict my space to a Bombay centric organization. I want it to become a national organization which attracts audiences from everywhere, and it does not have to be national also. It can, maybe in due course of time, it'll attract audiences a lot more from outside India. But to make Indian art and Indian artists attractive, you have to think like that, and you have to think out of the box. So I feel like, why should I restrict myself, to a physical space when I can be, catering to a whole lot of people in the virtual space, So that is how I would like to answer that question.
That's amazing, Saloni. Some great work there. Thank you very much. And on to the vote of thanks. Culture plays an important role in the development of any nation. It represents a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices. Culture and creativity manifest themselves in almost all economic, social, and other activities. A country as diverse as India's is symbolized by the plurality of its culture. India has one of the world's largest collection of songs, music, dance, theatre, folk traditions, performing arts, rites and rituals, paintings, and writings that are known as the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Today, we were fortunate to hear from the experts the work undertaken in the various fields of art and culture, particularly related to the present scenario. On behalf of FLO Mumbai, my sincere thanks to Asad Lalji, Tanuja Gomes, Avanti Nagral, Saloni Doshi for coordinating and moderating this event with aplomb. Thank you, FLO members and guests, for your presence. Have a safe and wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for thinking of us, and thank you for this lovely panel.
I can't thank you enough for coming together for this. This means a lot.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely weekend.
Bye, Asad. Bye.
And see you soon, Asad.
Look forward to it. Yeah.
Yes.